Spike Feresten is the writer or one of the writers and producers of Unfrosted, the Netflix comedy film starring Jerry Seinfeld about the creation of the Pop-Tart. I'm Matt Noble of Gold Derby. I wanted to start by asking you, Spike, how is writing a movie like making a Pop-Tart?
Making a Pop-Tart is much easier. You can open it and just eat it. I wish writing movies was like that.
Yeah,
Writing movies would be like if it took 4 years to toast the Pop-Tart.
yeah,
You had to keep checking on it like every couple of hours over those 4 years. That's how I would put those things together.
yeah.
Nothing like it. But
Okay.
when it finally premieres, like it did the other night, it is delicious like the first bite. Like that is a beautiful night. We had a wonderful premiere and we had so many friends there, and that was above and beyond anything I could have ever imagined. So that's like biting into it. Really good blueberry frosted.
I love it. What was important for you when you went to write this movie? What was something that was important to keep in mind?
Absolutely nothing was important at all, other than we have a good time.
Yeah.
Because it was in the middle of the pandemic. It was an idea Jerry and I had been batting around for fun and never seriously. And we were all, no one could work except for health workers. And I said, let's just get together and have a social Zoom. Jerry in New York, me here in LA, Andy Robin in Rhode Island, Barry in the Valley, and we'll bat around this idea and see what happens. And, before long, we had something we all started liking and we started getting serious about it. And Jerry said, I think rather than George Clooney and the Coen brothers, that was our fantasy that we would hand it off to those guys. He goes, maybe I'll star in it and maybe I'll direct it and maybe we should take this out and try and sell it. And so what began as just a fun kind of cocktail Zoom meeting turned into a serious project.
Oh, and like I guess it's a serious project, but it is jam-packed full of silliness and there's
Yeah. When I say getting serious, I meant, hey, we might show this to somebody. So
yeah,
we should cut it down from 300 pages to 140 maybe. And let's get rid of because it's so interesting to look back at it. We were just having fun.
mm,
They were like, hey, why don't we write a car chase with a bunch of kids crashing like the bullet chase? Okay, we would write 7 pages. It was just a way to pass time because who knew if we were even going to get out of this thing?
yeah.
So we at one point looked at it as a script seriously, but it is complete silliness.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just like sort of an avalanche of joke after joke, absurd scene after absurd scene. But it is like all structured around this story,
It
between the
is.
Kellogg's and the posts in trying to get this baked treat. For a film like this, what comes first, Spike? The jokes or the story?
It really, I wrote on the original Seinfeld series. So did Andy. Barry used to write some of the stand up. It really kind of came out like that. It was, we knew there was a spine of a story, and I had to kind of be the parent in the room and keep these guys on it a little bit. And that was that Post had this thing before Kellogg's did, and then Kellogg's had 6 months to create a competing project. They were both essentially the same, but Kellogg's came up with a better name. One was the Post was the country square, and no kid in the 60s wanted to be a square, let alone a country square. And Kellogg's had the Pop Tart based on an Andy Warhol's pop art. And really, that was the big difference. It was one was marketed to kids and one was marketed to adults. So we stayed on that skeleton. Everything that we would throw up, joke or otherwise, or scene had to fit on that bare tree. It's kind of like decorating a Christmas tree, right? You
Yeah.
can't put things off the branches. You got to find a place to hang everything. So, I can't say that there may have been a joke here or there that turned into a scene, but for the most part, scenes, ideas like Jerry would say, what would a funeral look like with serial honors, full serial honors, like military honors, but what would they do in this imaginary world? And, it turned out we had a character who dies kind of comedically in a funny way, creating a Pop Tart, which never happened. And we were like, well, the funeral scene should fit on right after that. And it turns out to be a funny little set piece. So that was really the guideline for this. It was really Seinfeld storytelling, very much like when we were writing the show and Jerry was making calls like that. This is too much. This is not enough.
Yeah. It's also like, it's got the feel of a sort of feature film, like sort of almost a homage or a parody to like, the Cold War space race movies.
Exactly.
But it's
Yeah.
also got, those sort of Seinfeld elements, but also there's like a real sketch comedy sensibility to it
There
as well
is.
with the
Yeah,
character.
but if you remember Seinfeld episodes, we were looking at movies and talking about movies all the time, like
Yeah.
the JFK parody of the loogie. There was Nick. It's we
Mm.
were always kind of filtering pop culture into our scripts if it worked, if we thought it would be funny and kind of showing our take. And I never thought of it that way, but if you look at season 8 and 9 of Seinfeld, they are very sketchy. They're very broad and they're very out there. And part of that is the balance of Larry and Jerry. Larry left after season 7 and Jerry was kind of running it. And you really see what entertains Jerry, and that is happening for sure in this film. The
Yeah.
guideline from day one was like very simple. And it's so liberating. If it's funny, we're putting it in.
Yeah.
That would say Jerry would say it every day. If it's funny, no, it's funny. We're going to put it in
Yeah.
because the goal here is nothing more than entertaining people. We just want to make people laugh. And if you remember, we're in this dark time, and Hollywood was churning out these depressing movies, and we were just like, "What? This is not what we need. We need to be taking people out of this and giving them a little break." So we thought maybe we would try that, and here we are.
Oh, that's cool. What for you, what's the funniest scene in the film?
For me,
Yeah, for you.
like to enjoy. Well, it's hard for me to say, a piece of writing that I've done that's funny. I tend to enjoy the jokes of the other writers. So, Jerry's baby is the buried with cereal honors scene. I really love that.
Yeah.
Um, and then, there's the scene, I guess we can talk about it, the Mad Men scene.
Yeah.
When we were writing, we would take breaks. You get hungry when you write. So after an hour of writing, everybody'd come up with their snacks and we're all eating. And Jerry was rewatching Mad Men from beginning to end. I was rewatching Sopranos. He was rewatching Mad Men, the whole series. And we were laughing about how they play like sitcoms at times.
Hmm.
And then so we were looking, on YouTube, you find really smart content creators who put laugh tracks to
Yeah.
Sopranos and to Mad Men. And there was one scene in Mad Men where Don Draper is pitching a lipstick company, I think, and he's just so mean. And Jerry was like, and we're laughing at his performance. We're laughing at Matt Weiner's writing. And he's like, why are these people so mean? They're just making commercials, right? And someone said, and I don't remember who, if it was even Jerry, but it didn't matter. It was someone on the team. It's 1963, and the Mad Men, in theory, are around when these
Yeah.
guys are creating this rectangle with fruit in it, and they don't have a name yet. Could we just have them come in and pitch and have them, pitch it in a way that's really not even close?
Yeah.
And that became that scene. So, I hadn't seen the movie for a little while since we wrapped it up a few months back. But at the premiere, I found myself most excited for that scene. It starts on the back of John Hamm's head, and when he turns, the theater went nuts, and I actually got really excited. And that scene really, I think, might be my favorite scene in the movie.
Yeah. That was my favorite scene too,
Yeah,
actually.
yeah. John
I
Hamm, John Slattery crushed
if,
it. They were nice
if
enough
I
to reprise it, and
yeah,
which was its own little issue. But
yeah,
we had it for Jerry. It was really like, some guys will go to fantasy baseball camp or rock and roll camp, or this was his fantasy TV camp. He got to be in a scene with the Mad Men, and
yeah.
we had props from the actual series there, thanks to our furniture and art direction department. It was amazing. It was an amazing day.
And it took me straight to that lipstick scene. Like you guys nailed that. Like,
Oh
uh,
yeah, you know the scene.
you mark your man. Like,
Yeah, Kabuki.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So what like you've worked with Jerry for so many years. What have you learnt over that time working with him?
Well, two things: commitment to just being funny, just being funny. I remember, a great story he told me. the history of these shows get rewritten every time somebody gets interviewed. But hopefully this is true. I believe him. Is when they did the testing, they were bringing in the actors for Seinfeld, right? And they brought in Michael Richards, and the network thought, he's okay. You're right. He's very funny, but we don't think he's the character. Some version of that. And Jerry said, "Well, you're right, but if you want funny, don't you think you would want the funny guy?" And they had to turn NBC on to Michael Richards simply because he's the funniest. Now, you would think networks would be focused on the funniest thing. Jerry and Larry, and Jerry in particular, remains committed to the funniest thing. And in comedy, that's important. And you'd be surprised at how quickly people lose sight of those simple little directions. That's one thing I really love about him, is he keeps reminding me of that. Just be funny and just show the audience funny things. That's our job. We're here to make people laugh. We're not here to write serious films about anything. We're not going to do an origin story of the Pop-Tart, for instance. We're going to do something we think is funny. The second is he really hates cliches. Like if you're going to write even a thank you note, if you know Jerry, you're going to write him no cliches, keep it short, right? So when we're writing lines and dialogue, don't suggest, well, what are you going to do now? Well, it is what it is. Don't do any of that stuff. Come up with a unique version of it, or don't say it at all. And that makes the writing very lively.
Yeah. Yeah. Has he changed at all over the years?
He seems to be getting older.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
So yeah, he's a little slower. I
yeah.
think he is changing.
Yeah.
But I, you know, I see he to me is the same guy. I mean, he writes every day, he writes stand up every day, and he keeps things really simple when it comes to his writing. If anything, I think he's become more uh, no, I think he's loosened up a little bit with things that could have be obscenities, here and there, a suck, or he doesn't use obscenities because he wants families to enjoy his comedy and his movies. So I think he's loosened up a little bit there, but his focus remains, if it's funny, let's put it in. And I will also say, he doesn't like to offend people. He doesn't want people offended. The goal is always to have an audience laughing, and it's always that simple.
Mm.
And when people are offended, or people scratch their head because they're confused, those are places that he eliminates quickly. He's a tuning fork for comedy and words that make people laugh.
Yeah. And I get like you've like had quite a long career in comedy, not just working with Jerry, but working on David Letterman's shows. I think did you do a bit of writing for The Simpsons as well? Like,
Just one script.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I went. I went to Seinfeld instead. But
yeah,
yeah, I
yeah.
love that group of writers. They're amazing.
Yeah, and you had your own talk show, your talk
Mhm.
show with Spike on the Fox. Are you still the longest serving
I
late
am.
night show talk show host
No
on
one
Fox?
has beaten me. Three
There,
seasons, 3 years.
there you go. You're Fox late
My
night.
only mistake was letting the writers go after Bill O'Reilly too much. That was it. And they said, "You gotta go, kid."
Yeah. So I guess like from all these different sort of experience in comedy, what have you learnt is most important about comedy after all these years and working with Dave and Jerry and just on your own show too?
Um, well, working with folks like Dave and Jerry is to really listen to them and give them what they want. Try to understand their framework and try to paint within those lines, maybe a little outside of it, but they obviously got to where they are by doing something right, right? So, if you listen to them, you can really it's kind of like you can be the gas in a I don't know, like a I was going to say a Prius, or you can be the gas in a race car, right? But you're just going to be the gas. And when you get guys like that, they're race cars. And when you put the right gas in it, you can write the soup Nazi. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I can tell that story, I can write that spec, and no one's ever going to hear about it. But you take it and you put it into that race car, and it will explode. They'll turn it into something beyond your, your abilities, and that's really what Unfrosted is. In the same, it's the same thing. I was having coffee this morning with Bill Miller of the Malibu Kitchen, who's just got a New York style diner in Malibu where we would drive and sit and have coffee. Most of this movie was figured out on his porch. Now, it could have just been us, just this is what we talked about way back when. Well, now here we are. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, I've learned to kind of listen closely to little ideas, then go, well, maybe I shouldn't just go to the gym right now and work out. Maybe I should think about this idea seriously and come back to Jerry and go, you might have something there. Maybe we should give it a shot. You know what I mean? Because ideas are fleeting. They're little thoughts, and I mean, I imagine even yourself, if you look back at how you started and how you got to where you are right now, there are little moments where you'll go, God, I could have gone anywhere, but I did this one thing. Like one of my most remarkable little moments is I was an intern at Saturday Night Live and I was leaving at 3 in the morning, New York, for good. After the party, my internship was done and I was headed back to Boston to wrap up school, and I was almost up the steps of 30 Rock where the skating rink was. And I went, oh, you know what? I should go thank Ed Hall, who I interned under. There he is. He's getting eggs over there. And I was like, oh, do I have time? And I walk over there. We have a nice chat. And he goes, how'd you like to do an internship on David Letterman? And and that's the moment where I go, really? I could come back to this? And now here we are. I think about these little moments all the time, these little opportunities that are presented to us, and ideas are like that too. You'll have a random thought in the dentist chair as a writer, write it down and look at it again later on because it might be something.
Yeah. Well, what makes an idea funny for you?
I have to laugh. I have to get excited about it. I don't think too much about it, but I know at this point, if I get excited about it, it might be something,
Mm,
and I can run it by a few people. But you get to know your confidence level in an idea after all these years, and go, I think, you still never know, and we still don't even know about Unfrosted. We'll see how the world likes it, but you just get a feeling about stuff.
mm,
And then there's also this other piece, Rob Burnett of Letterman. When I was doing the late night show, I called him and I said, everybody's asking me to make viral videos. He goes, you can't do that. He goes, you'll never know what's going to pop. Just keep making stuff and suddenly something will. And that was a very true advice. You never know. You can
mm.
just keep making things and things suddenly explode. If you would
Yeah.
ask me, do I think The Soup Nazi is a good episode? I'd go, no, it's one of the worst half hours ever written. And I think I'm going to get fired.
Yeah.
And then, oh my God, I'm talking about it 30 years later. That's weird.
Yeah. Just to finish off, Spike, how would you describe Unfrosted? Because there's a lot going on in the film. What is Unfrosted?
Unfrosted is Jerry and I and Andy and all the funniest people we know having the time of our life, spending Netflix's money, just having fun and making a comedy we think will bring a little joy to your life today. That's what we think it is. That it will leave you with a really good feeling and a happy feeling and a bunch of laughs along the way. I think people are going to watch it 2 or 3 times because it's densely packed. Jerry
Mm,
likes to write that way. And for me, that's what this movie is. Don't take it too seriously. If you're up for having a good time, pour yourself a cocktail, have a little cannabis, whatever you do,
yeah.
and enjoy yourself. Because this was a labor of love for us, and we really loved writing it, and we really loved making it, and we hope that comes across to everybody.
Yeah. Well, Spike, all the best of luck for the Emmy Awards for Unfrosted. That's where we'll be competing this year.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so people who love the Emmy Awards can also go to goldderby.com to follow our racetrack odds, join discussions in the forums, and see other interviews with contenders. And Spike, just thanks so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, very nice to meet you.